Today's lesson is going to be centered on the Ottoman Empire, and it's going to be the start of chapter 18 for the class of world history. One of the things that we want to understand about the Ottomans is that really they're an Islamic group. They're from the region of Anatolia, also known as Asia Minor / modern day Turkey, and then their empire sort of spreads from there. Chapter 18 is all about land-based empires. These are empires that didn't really utilize much of a navy to do any type of major conquering. So most of their land was connected by areas that you could traverse by foot or by carriage or horseback. And the first one that we're going to take a look at is really one that lasts from the 13 and 1400s all the way up into the modern times, and that's going to be the Ottoman Empire. A couple of things we'll take a look at here back in the starting point of 1300. What we want to take a look at first is, while the Renaissance and Reformation are taking place in places like northern Italy and the rest of Europe, what was going on with the Byzantine Empire? Now, we've learned in the past that by the 1300s, the Byzantine Empire of Anatolia was sort of in decline. The area was being attacked by multiple groups, and it was being inhabited by nomadic Turks who were generally practicing the Muslim faith. Now, eventually, during this time period, the Turks are going to move into Byzantium, which is really the center port of kind of where Anatolia meets Greece. I'll show you on the map here real quick. This is where I would say Byzantium is located, right in this region here, where kind of Constantinople and extension would be located. This is modern day Turkey. This is modern day Greece right here, okay, an extending point down into this region. So when we talk about Byzantium, we're talking about this region right here. Okay, one of the ways that they accomplished this were through groups of people called Ghazis. Ghazis are nomadic Turkish people. They're actually quite militaristic. They're known as warriors, and their goal is to spread the Islamic faith. They're usually led by a person who takes the title of Emir. This is basically a word that means the chief commander of the Ghazis. And this person and the people who follow his rule generally follow a strict Islamic code of laws, which would be Sharia law in most cases. Now, there are also people called infidels. Now, when you think about infidels, these are those folks that did not believe in the Islamic faith. So Christians and pagans and Zoroastrians, Hebrews, these folks would be considered infidels by the Ghazis. Now, the Ghazis generally would attack and conquer these infidel groups, and that was one of the goals of the Ghazis, okay? One of these successful leaders was named Osman, and Osman was probably the most powerful and successful Ghazi leader. It's through Osman that we get the name Ottomans. So the Ottomans were the followers of Osman, and he was also known as Othman, and that's sort of where the name comes from. He created an actual state or area of control for the Ghazis within Anatolia. And that's what really kicks off the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman military is something that is noteworthy. They were utilizing gunpowder, and they had armed their foot soldiers with muskets. So this is something fairly new in this region of the world. They also still had archers, which were on horseback, which was kind of a Mongol theme, a Turk thing that's going to get passed down. But the thing that I really want to make clear that really sets them apart is their use of cannon. They use the artillery, which is also known as using cannon, as an offensive weapon. And they needed to do this because many of your major cities that you would attack were defended by stone walls. And so the Ottomans sort of put use of cannon kind of into the big picture in history. Okay, next we'll take a look at what happens after Osman. There's a leader named Orkham. He's the Osman's son. He was actually the second known ruler of the Ottomans, and he declared himself to be named Sultan. Now, when you think of the word Sultan, we've learned about it in the past if you've been following the videos and listening to my lectures, but Sultan is an overlord or one with power. It's basically another word for ruler. Under this guy Orkham's rule in 1361, the Ottomans captured a major city called Adrianople. It's a major city in modern-day Turkey or Anatolia. How did the Ottomans treat people that they conquered, like the people in Adrianople? They actually treated them fairly well. They're going back to the old Persian ruler Cyrus the Great, who kind of ruled this area. They've learned by studying history that if you treat the people that you conquer poorly, then eventually they're going to rebel against you. Now, so you can see that the Ottoman Empire is growing pretty fast and pretty strong here. But that expansion is going to be halted by a key leader named Timur the Lame. Timur the Lame was actually a Central Asian ruler. When I say Central Asia, I'm talking about kind of the stands, Afghanistan, Kazakhstan, which actually is a real country, by the way, not just where Borat is from and make believe. It actually is a real country. And also Pakistan. That region there would be kind of where Timur the Lame was coming from. But he defeated the Ottoman Turks at a famous battle called the Battle of Ankara. And this loss basically halted the Ottoman expansion until about 1450, when powerful rulers sort of return and try to get Constantinople out of control by the Byzantines. And that's going to be talked about here next in the next portion of the lesson in Roman numeral 3. Powerful sultans, that after Orkham sort of names himself sultan, a lot of the Ottoman rulers took that name. So powerful sultans spur what we call dramatic expansion. So we're going to see the Ottoman Empire sort of really grow during this time period. And that starts with Mehmed II. He is the one responsible for conquering Constantinople, this major city, this capital city of the Byzantine Empire, which was defended by 2 major stone walls. Now, there is actually a great history-based series about the Ottoman Empire. It's a Netflix show, and it's if you search the Ottomans on Netflix, it'll pop up. It's really a good documentary style show. It does have like some action scenes too. So if you're a history buff or you really want to do well on your AP exam, that would be something for you. If you're just taking a history course just to get through it, you probably won't be all that interested in it. But you never know. You might want to take a look and see if it catches your interest there. Now, after this major loss at the Battle of Ankara to Timur the Lame, the Ottomans experienced civil war among some of the brothers, the sons of Orkham. Mehmed I was the victor, and then he passed his empire on to his son Murad. Now, Murad was the father of Mehmed II, and Mehmed II is the one that we really want to focus in on because he's the one who's known as the conqueror, and he led the Ottomans into attacking Constantinople and defeating it in 1453. Now, eventually, once Mehmed moves into the city of Constantinople, the name was changed to Istanbul. There's a famous song about this. I would play it for you on the video, but it'll give me a copyright error. So if you're going to be in person in my class, I will play the song. But unfortunately, on this, I don't really want to get into the copyright stuff. Okay, so with capital letter B now, what we're going to talk about is the Ottomans then take over the Islamic holy cities. There was another leader that was Mehmed's grandson. His name was Selim the Grim. He came to power in 1512, and he captured the city of Mecca and the city of Medina, which were the 2 holiest cities of the Muslim world. He then conquered Cairo, which was a major epicenter of intellectual abilities and education for the Muslim world. And this sort of sets the format for the Empire of the Ottomans, which you can see here sort of starts in the dark brown, which would be modern day Turkey, parts of Arabia here, and then most of Greece. And then eventually it starts to add this lighter brown color up in here into modern day southern Russia area here, Georgia, Crimea Peninsula, down into here into what is modern day Iraq and Iran, okay, all along the Muslim coast here of Arabia, Egypt, and then portions of northern Africa, and even into modern day Hungary to the north here. So starting to get into Central Europe, parts of Austria as well. So the Ottoman Empire, that actually is a really big empire right there. That's a lot of area to control. Kind of looks a lot like the old Roman Empire. If you were to slide some of this over this way, you'd have, and if you added some of this territory here, you'd kind of have the same region as what the Romans ruled. So this is kind of a big deal. Okay, next we'll take a look at a key leader named Suleiman, who's known as the lawgiver. Suleiman was the son of Selim the Grim. He came to the throne in 1520, and he ruled for 46 years. That's a really long time to be in power. He's also known as Suleiman the Magnificent, which I will show you a picture of what he may have looked like. So this is Suleiman. You can see that his time frame, 1494 to 1566, is quite a long time span for back in those days. That's close to 70 years. He ruled for 46 of those. He's called Suleiman the Lawgiver because he does create a code of laws, and he was very interested in getting the justice system organized in the Ottoman Empire. He's also known as Suleiman the Magnificent for some of his other exploits and accomplishments. So let's take a look at some of those things. He would use Istanbul, or old school Constantinople, as his central headquarters. He produced a very strong navy. So he's one of the first Ottoman rulers to start to expand into the naval aspect of things. With his military power, the Ottomans went to war with Central Europeans, North Africans, and also Central Asians. He was actually, during this time, the most powerful ruler. He was rivaled by Charles V, who was the Holy Roman Emperor and also the King of Spain, which Spain at this time, 1500s, was the most powerful country in Europe. Capital C talks about how he organized his rule, and he was very well known for governing the very large empire effectively. He created a code of laws. This is why he's called the lawmaker. He also acquired 20,000 personal slaves as part of a policy called the Devshirme program. The Devshirme program is not really something to be too proud of, but it was effective for the Ottomans. It's basically where the Sultan's army would draft young boys from the peoples that they conquered that were Christians. And a lot of Christian families would actually sell their young boys to be taken into the Devshirme program because they would be taken very good care of, and they would be educated. They would be converted to Islam, though, and they would be trained soldiers. And eventually they became known as the Janissaries, which some of these Devshirme program boys would become a part of. The Janissaries were an elite fighting force of 30,000 soldiers. They were loyal directly to the Sultan, and they were known as his personal bodyguard. We've learned about something similar to this in the past with Persia and the 10,000 immortals. That those people became the personal bodyguard of kings like Darius, kings like Xerxes, that you might have been acquainted with in the Battle of Thermopylae. But this was actually making the Sultan's power much greater, but also it helped with, of course, conquering and defending the Ottoman Empire as well. Capital letter D talks about a little bit of cultural flowering. Of course, during Suleiman's rule, the Ottomans underwent a artistic and educational period similar to the European Renaissance, where there's a rebirth of art and learning. There's a focus on education. But then eventually, Suleiman, his heirs, did have a little bit of trouble. One of the things that these guys would do back in this time, very popular, 1300s, 1400s, 1500s, they would actually kill some of their sons if they saw them as a rival to their own throne. And this happened with Suleiman. He killed one of his sons. He had his other son exiled. His third son, who was remaining, was actually an incompetent ruler. Didn't have the right characteristics to be a strong leader. He did eventually come to the throne, though. His name was Selim II, and he's overall known as a weak ruler, which started leading into the decline of the once very powerful Ottoman Empire. But they did last for a very long time, and they were very powerful. So a couple of things that I would say to really master with studying the Ottomans. Number one, understanding geography, where they're from, modern-day Turkey, and then expanding into the other regions that I showed you on the map. Number two, their use of artillery in the military. And then number three, a little bit of cultural blending, and also I would say with that cultural blending, understanding how they governed, right? How they governed with, Suleiman and the laws and the codes, and how they took over Muslim cities and then expanded the Islamic faith through the Ghazis and the Janissaries. Things of that nature would be some of your more important factors to master when understanding the Ottomans.